This is a story that begins with a dying wish.
One thing I would like you to do.
My mother's last request that my sister and I finish writing the memoir she'd started about her German childhood, when her father designed a secret super weapon for Adolf Hitler.
Deutschland, Sieg heil!
My grandfather, Robert Lesser, headed the Nazi project to build the world's first cruise missile, which terrorized millions and left a legacy that dogged my mother like a curse.
She had some secrets. Mom had some secrets.
I'm Suzanne Rico. Join my sister and me as we search for the truth behind our grandfather's work and for the first time, face the ghosts of our past.
Jeez. Who is he?
Listen to The Man Who Calculated Death. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 412 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm good, man. And how about you?
I'm good. I'm having a good week.
That's awesome.
You know, you and I have recorded a few episodes already.
We have.
And we're on to Unsolved because we did put out a Patreon episode on Saturday on Kin Schwan Pan. And this case is not an old case. It goes back to 2021, but 26-year-old Kevin Jeong was murdered in what police thought was a violent case of road rage, but using social media, they identified a surprising suspect. So it's a good episode. If you're on Patreon, check it out. If you're not, now's a great time to sign up.
Jump over there and listen. 78 some episodes.
Yeah. We also have a new episode out on True Crime All the Time where we're talking about Timothy John Cook and the murder of Omar Medina, a young music producer who went missing in 2017. His body was found in a barrel in the San Diego Bay.
Yeah, bizarre.
It's a bizarre case. You got multiple people involved. Who did what? I don't want to give anything away, so check that episode out. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Inga Bosworth.
Hey, Inga.
Liza Green.
What's going on, Liza?
Tammy.
Hey, Tammy.
Tessa B1213.
Well, thanks, Tessa.
But Toothless.
I don't know if you're saying but in Toothless. I'm thinking is it they need to see a dentist or they need to go to a proctologist.
But Toothless. Brian Middleton.
Hey, Brian.
Lee Cervantes.
Hey, Lee.
Beyond Blessed.
Hey, Beyond.
Laurel Hostler.
Hostler.
Derek McIntosh.
Hey, Derek.
And last but not least, Chuck Whitten.
What's going on, Whitten?
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Marilyn Strong.
Well, thanks, Strong.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support, the continued support. All of that is amazing.
It is.
All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. On December 15th, 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers at Flannan Isles went missing. Days passed with no one aware of their disappearance. A full investigation was launched after a relief crew discovered the abandoned island. Scotland's Northern Lighthouse Board developed an official theory as to what happened to the 3 men, but there have been many rumors over the years, ranging from death by sea monster to murder and all kinds of stuff in between. Yeah, I think, when you're in Scotland, you got to go see monsters sometimes.
Sure you do.
You are in the home of Loch Ness, Nessie.
Very famous. You need to get over to Scotland.
I do. I've been saying that. I don't know when we'll make it, but maybe when these girls get out of college and on their own.
Well,
and I have some disposable income.
Yeah. Well, you can go over there, check out the Loch Ness, and then maybe go check out the lighthouse,
Maybe. There might be some people who want to check it out after this episode.
Yeah, I know you have that man crush on that Gerard Butler.
Mm-hmm.
He made a movie about this.
Yeah, you were talking about that on Patreon. What's it called?
I think it's called The Vanishing.
Okay. I've not seen it, but after researching this episode, I definitely want to watch it. So the Flannan Isles are a small island group in the Outer Hebrides, or the Western Isles off the coast of Scotland. The Flannan Isles are located about 32 kilometers, or 17.5 nautical miles west of the Isle of Lewis, the largest of the Western Isles. The Flannan Isles have had no permanent residents since 1971, when the lighthouse became fully automated. So the only people who ever lived on this little island was whoever was operating the lighthouse.
The keepers.
Well, if you ever see a picture or a video of this, it's just a big mound with a lighthouse on top. And I think they said about 160 some stone steps that kind of wind up this hill to the lighthouse.
It doesn't sound like a fun place to stay.
No, and it looks dangerous as all get out. The lighthouse was built on the largest island, Elan Moor, which means big island. The 70-foot lighthouse was built on a 200-foot cliff, and it was said that the light could be seen for 24 nautical miles.
So a good location for a lighthouse. I mean, you want to be able to see the lighthouse from pretty far away.
Which I think is an important part in determining where you put a lighthouse. Good visibility. I mean,
like the key.
You don't want to put it like down in a valley, right?
And they're like, oh, where's the lighthouse at?
With mountains surrounding it. The first crew of lighthouse keepers started working on the island on December 7th, 1899, after 3 years of construction. Because of the high cliffs, it was difficult to get on and off the island. There were 2 landing places for ships on the east and west side of the island. Workers then had to walk up this long staircase on a grassy slope. The keepers also used a trolley system that went from the lighthouse to the landing to unload the steamers that came to the island. And you would think, right, there's got to be supplies. There's got to be replenishment of supplies. You're not going down to the local Kroger.
No, there's no local grocery store to go visit.
There were always supposed to be 4 men on the island at all times. They spent 6 weeks working and 2 weeks on the mainland. Relief steamers arrived every 2 weeks.
Kind of thinking maybe the solitaire of it.
Are you talking about the card game? Or
yeah, the solitaire game would get old after a while.
It would. I get what you're saying. Not having a lot of people. At least there's other people around. Can you imagine being by yourself?
Well, depending on who the other people are.
Well, that's true. You may not like them. You might not get along with them.
I'd be like, they're pairing me up with old Bob again and Tim and Judd.
But I can't imagine being by yourself, having no one to talk to. The Flannan Isles lighthouse had been in operation a little over a year when the 3 keepers went missing. The keepers on duty in December 1900 were James Ducat, the principal keeper, Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, and Donald MacArthur, an occasional keeper on duty for William Ross, the first assistant, who was on sick leave. James Ducat was born on August 11th, 1856. He was originally from Arbroath, Scotland. In November 1878, when he was 22 years old, Ducat entered the service of the commissioners of Northern Lighthouses. His longest station was at the Wrens of Islay Lighthouse, where he worked for over 7 years.
There's a career path in lighthouses, clearly.
Well, in the 1800s, there definitely was. Obviously today things are much more automated.
Yeah, a lot of GPS systems and...
No, I'm just talking about if you got a lighthouse.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, you don't need somebody up there.
I'm assuming
lighting the candle. Every
the
night.
lighthouse is automated. But you're right, with GPS systems and things like that. vessels are much less likely to run into land.
Yeah.
It's all charted. In April 1896, during the construction phase of the Flannan Isles lighthouse, Ducat was promoted from assistant lightkeeper to principal. I'm assuming that was a big deal.
I would think so.
He had been married since June 1882 and had 4 children ranging in age from 16 to 6 years old. Now, sources don't provide as much information on the other 2 lighthouse keepers, but we know that Thomas Marshall entered the service of the commissioners of Northern Lighthouses in April 1896 when he was 27. Before joining, he was a seaman. Prior to his assignment at Flannan Isles, he was an occasional lightkeeper on a Scottish island called Ailsa Craig. Marshall was unmarried and had no children. Much of Donald MacArthur's information was not recorded in the registers of the Northern Lighthouse Commission. According to the Press and Journal, he was an older soldier. Correspondence records suggest he had a wife and 2 children, but they're not officially identified in records. The Press and Journal also reported that MacArthur hated the posting at Flannan Isles.
So I'm not surprised you can't find a lot of information, right? I mean, this is going back over 100 years ago.
Yeah, and it's almost as if the less senior you were in the commission, the less information there was.
Yeah.
You know, as the principal, they had more information about him, meaning James, but you know, maybe that's to be expected.
But interesting that MacArthur hated his posting at the lighthouse here.
Well, I think it's something to keep in mind, right? When you know that a number of people disappeared, and one guy is known to have said that he hated this posting. Well, does that have anything to do with it?
Potentially.
Around midnight on December 15th, 1900, the steamship Arctur passed Flannan Isles. The crew noticed that the light was not on when it should have been. The captain did report this when the Arctur got to port 3 days later, but this news was not communicated to the Northern Lighthouse Board.
I'm pretty sure that's a big no-no.
Yeah, I'm assuming that there were times where it was supposed to be lit, no exceptions. Hence the fact that there were supposed to be 4 people on the assignment at all times.
Yeah, somebody's always awake, making sure the light is lit.
Because bad things would happen.
Yeah.
Or potentially could happen if it's not lit. The disappearance of the lighthouse keepers was not discovered until December 26, 1900, during a routine visit by the relief ship Hesperus. The captain immediately noticed there were no signals from the keepers and no preparations made for their landing, despite their scheduled visit. Captain Harvey blew the steam whistle and siren to get the keepers' attention. He also fired a rocket and received no response. Assistant keeper Joseph Moore lowered a boat and went ashore. I'm not sure what kind of rocket this guy is firing. I don't know if this is more like a bottle rocket to get their attention.
Or more like a mortar.
Well, you're not trying to destroy the lighthouse. You're not laying siege to it. I'm assuming it was something akin to like a flare gun before they had flare guns, but it just said rockets. I really don't know what it was.
Probably something that made a good amount of noise.
Yeah, but not designed to blow a hole in the side of the lighthouse.
Not time for that yet.
A mortar.
But I'm guessing that Joseph Moore was probably somewhat nervous about going on land to go check out the lighthouse. I mean, no one's responding. I think you'd be somewhat nervous.
Yeah, I think so. Knowing that the light's not on, and he is, as much as anyone, would know what the protocol was. I mean, he was there to relieve somebody.
Yeah.
After making it to the landing, Moore had to climb 160 steps to get to the lighthouse, where he found an eerie scene. The entrance gate and outside doors were closed. Inside, the clock had stopped. There was no fire lit, and the keepers' beds were empty. The only living thing in the lighthouse was a canary in a cage.
Spooky.
Well, My thought is this thing would be eerie anyway.
Sure.
I mean, you can see pictures of it walking up those steps, especially in the dark, would be spooky. But when you walk in and nobody's in there, nobody's sleeping in their beds, there's no fire, you already know the light's not turned on, not lit, you got to think something's wrong.
I mean, I've been in maybe 3 lighthouses, and they always seem a little eerie to me. That's me, though. I mean, I know some people love to go visit lighthouses. And
yeah, I get it. Not during the day. Okay. Maybe not as eerie, but, you know, if you're landing, it's dark, that ups the spookiness factor.
The eeriness?
And the eeriness factor. The lamp, lens, and machinery of the light had been cleaned. The oil fountains and canteens were filled, which indicated the morning chores had been completed. The table was set, and the kitchen had been cleaned from breakfast. Moore knew that something terrible must have happened for all 3 keepers to abandon their post, so he rushed back to the ship to inform the captain. The captain decided that Moore would have to return to the island to search and to keep the lighthouse in operation. 4 volunteers went with him.
I'd say, yeah, they're going to have to come with me.
I'm not doing this on my own. Something very weird is going on here. There's no way in hell you're getting me to stay here by myself and operate this lighthouse. But I understand that the lighthouse needs to be in operation, right? It's a real safety concern. The men continued their search of the island. Inside the lighthouse, the search party found an oilskin, which was used to protect the keepers from the harsh weather. This indicated one of the keepers went outside without his gear for some reason. They also discovered the logbook. The last entries were made on December 13th. However, there were notes from December 14th and 15th, written elsewhere that had not yet been transferred to the official log. The notes recorded information such as barometer and thermometer readings and the time the light was extinguished. The state of the wind was taken at 9 a.m. on December 15th, which suggested that the men disappeared at some point that afternoon. And I think if you take this kind of note at 9 a.m., and then you also take kind of the state of the lighthouse, right? We said it appeared as though the kitchen had been cleaned up from breakfast. The morning chores had all been completed. All of that kind of says, right? The morning went okay.
What happened after that?
But sometime after maybe 9, something happened. I used to have no idea what to get my mom for Mother's Day, especially when she hits me with the classic, don't get me anything. But I still want to give her something that feels special. Quince totally solved it for me. Everything is high quality, feels super thoughtful, and it's actually affordable. Now I don't overthink it. I just go straight to Quince. They have cashmere sweaters from $50, 14 karat gold jewelry, Italian leather bags, fragrances, and more. The best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They do this by partnering directly with top factories, cutting out the cost of the middleman and passing the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. This year, I got my mom a zip-up cashmere sweater. I have one that I wear in the studio. I know she's going to love it. It is so soft, and you would expect to pay 3 times what I paid for this item, at least. Thoughtful, timeless, totally her. Shop Mother's Day at Quince. Go to quince.com/truecrime for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/truecrime to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/truecrime. Homes.com knows that when it comes to home shopping, it's never just about the house or condo. It's about the home. And what makes a home is more than just the house or property. It's the location and the neighborhood. If you have kids, it's also schools, nearby parks, and transportation options. That's why Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in-depth information they need to find the right home. And when I say in-depth, I'm talking deep. Each listing features comprehensive information about the neighborhood, complete with a video guide. They also have details about local schools with test scores, state rankings, and student-to-teacher ratio. They even have an agent directory with the sales history of each agent. So when it comes to finding a home, not just a house, this is everything you need to know, all in one place. Homes.com. We've done your homework. On the western side of the island, there was evidence of a strong storm. Iron railings were bent by the wind. A track was torn away from the concrete, and a large boulder had rolled out of place. A supply box was smashed on the ground with its contents spread across the rocks.
Just wonder if it's uncommon for them to have storms like that up there, though. I would think it's not unheard of.
Well, I wouldn't think so. I mean, you have to figure you're pretty exposed, right? On like a small little island. You don't have anything to break the wind and all of that.
Yeah. You're taking it head on.
But it must have been pretty strong when you're talking about bending iron, tearing away concrete. The captain of the Hesperus sent the following telegram, which was published by the Northern Lighthouse Board. A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Fired a rocket, but as no response was made, managed to land more. Went up to the station, but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Night coming on, we couldn't wait to make something as to their fate. I have left Moore, McDonald, buoy master, and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Oban until I hear from you. I have repeated this wire to Muirhead in case you are not at home. I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes if you wish to wire me.
So based on that, he's thinking either they got blown over the cliffs and fell into the water or drowned trying to secure the crane.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that he is saying is accident. Must have been an accident.
Yeah.
Which does make a lot of sense. I mean, if you think about it, what are the chances that somebody's going to come to that island and want to do these people harm?
Very low odds.
I would think so. It's pretty remote. Now, could somebody have an issue with one of the guys and they knew that they would be out there? Yeah, it's possible. The other thing that, I was thinking about was, we mentioned it earlier, but the clocks were stopped. And that's not surprising, right? Because in 1900, you would have had to have wound the clocks. And at a certain point, with nobody winding them, they would stop. And I would think back then, there was not a lot of reserve. So they would probably stop pretty quickly, if not wound, I would think at least daily.
Yeah, I'm sure that was part of their responsibility. Wind the clocks.
Joseph Moore sent a letter soon after the discovery, which was published in full by the Northern Lighthouse Board. It read, "Sir, it was with deep regret I wish you to learn the very sad affair that has taken place here during the past fortnight, namely the disappearance of my 2 fellow lightkeepers, Mr. Ducat and Mr. Marshall, together with the occasional keeper, Donald MacArthur, from off this island." And at least he mentioned the guy's name. I thought it was strange in the other letter, he just called him occasional keeper.
Yeah.
Like he didn't even say his full name.
Like he wasn't worthy of being mentioned.
Right. I thought that was strange. Moore went on to say, "As you are aware, the relief was made on the 26th. That day, as on other relief days, we came to anchorage under Flannan Isles, and not seeing the lighthouse flag flying, we thought they did not perceive us coming. The steamer's horn was sounded several times. Still no reply. At last, Captain Harvey deemed it prudent to lower a boat and land a man if it was possible. I was the first to land, leaving Mr. McCormick and his men in the boat till I should return from the lighthouse. I went up, and on coming to the entrance gate, I found it closed. I made for entrance door leading to the kitchen and storeroom, found it also closed, and the door inside that. But the kitchen door itself was open. On entering the kitchen, I looked at the fireplace and saw that the fire was not lighted for some days. I then entered the rooms in succession, found the beds empty just as they left them in the early morning.
So pretty far, a lot of details on what he encountered.
Yeah, I would say that this letter is very detailed. He went on to say, I did not take time to search further, for I only too well knew something serious had occurred. I darted out and made for the landing. When I reached there, I informed Mr. McCormick that the place was deserted. He with some of the men came up second time so as to make sure. But unfortunately, the first impression was only too true. Mr. McCormick and myself proceeded to the light room, where everything was in proper order. The lamp was cleaned, the fountain full, blinds on the windows, etc. We left and proceeded on board the steamer. On arrival, Captain Harvey ordered me back again to the island, accompanied with Mr. McDonald, buoy master, a Campbell, and a Lamont, who were to do duty with me till timely aid should arrive. We went ashore and proceeded up to the light room and lighted the light in the proper time that night and every night since. The following day, we traversed the island from end to end, but still nothing to be seen to convince us how it happened. Nothing appears touched at East Landing to show that they were taken from there. Ropes are all in their respective places in the shelter, just as they were left after the relief on the 7th. On West Side, it is somewhat different. We had an old box halfway up the railway for holding West Landing mooring ropes and tackle, and it has gone. Some of the ropes, it appears, got washed out of it. They lie strewn on the rocks near the crane. The crane itself is safe. The iron railings along the passage, connecting railway with footpath to landing, and started from their foundation and broken in several places. Also railing round crane and handrail for making mooring rope fast for boat is entirely carried away. Now there is nothing to give us any indication that it was there the poor men lost their lives, only that Mr. Marshall has his sea boots on and oilskins. Also, Mr. Ducat has his sea boots on. He had no oilskin, only an old waterproof coat, and that is away. Donald MacArthur has his wearing coat left behind him, which shows, as far as I know, that he went out in shirt sleeves. He never used any other coat on previous occasions, only the one I am referring to. And it was signed Mr. J. Moore, Assistant Lightkeeper, Flannan Isles, Lighthouse, 28 December 1900. So, I think there's a couple of things there at the end of the letter where he's talking about, both landings. East Landing seems pretty normal.
Yeah.
But the West Landing, he's talking about ropes being washed out of this box, and the box has been kind of maybe tossed.
Definitely some disturbances.
Yeah. And to me, it makes it sound like, okay, if there was a storm, maybe it hit that side versus the other side where there was little to no damage. But then you also have kind of a description of each man and what they went out in. And Donald MacArthur doesn't take his coat. And the thought is that, he went out wearing only shirt sleeves, which would be pretty strange.
Unless you're in a rush for some reason.
Right. It makes it sound like they had to leave so quickly. They didn't even have time to grab the proper gear. So then your mind automatically goes to, well, what would make that happen?
Yeah.
What would cause that to happen? On December 29th, Northern Lighthouse Board Superintendent Robert Muirhead arrived on the island to lead the investigation. The following details come from his report. submitted on January 8th, 1901. Muirhead concluded that the men left the lighthouse due to severe weather, possibly to secure gear or inspect damage at one of the landing places. They were then swept out to sea by a large wave.
I mean, when you think about how it's being described, I mean, it does make some sense.
Yeah, I think it does. So you got 4 guys or 3 guys, however many guys are there.
3 guys.
There's one guy that's supposed to be there, but he's not.
Right.
Right. And all of a sudden you're in the lighthouse and this terrible storm begins hitting the island. And let's say it's, hitting it on this west side, and everything happens so suddenly that they feel as though they've got to rush out. They're worried about the crane. They're worried about the ropes used to secure the ships when they land. They're worried about all of this stuff. And they get down there and a rogue wave, like one of these massive waves, hits. And you know how it does. It hits the land and then kind of recedes,
right,
taking whatever is in its path with it. And that, I can see that scenario.
And if you're not prepared, ready to hold on to something, if there's anything to even hold on to, it's going to sweep you out.
Well, I think it's very hard to prepare for something like that because the force and the power is just not something, like even if you were holding on to something, I don't know if you're strong enough to keep that grip,
right,
and keep hold.
And maybe that's what the third guy sees, right? He sees that they're going to be swept out, and he runs down to see if he can help them, and he gets down there too late. Maybe that's why he doesn't put on his coat. Or maybe he ran down before then just to try to help secure.
Yeah, I have no idea about the order of anything. But, this theory, and you have to call it a theory, that they were swept out to sea by a large wave in the absence of any other type of evidence. I think it's a pretty good theory.
Sure.
Now, if there was no damage, if there was nothing amiss around the island, it would make less sense.
It would.
But the mere fact that obviously that side of the island was hit by something, and we talked about it, right? Kind of clear evidence of a storm. Per Muirhead's report, the iron railings around the crane platform and from the terminus of the tramway to the concrete steps up from the west landing were displaced and twisted. A large block of stone had been dislodged from its position higher up and carried down to and left on the concrete path. A life buoy fastened to the railings along this path to be used in case of emergency had disappeared, and I thought at first that it had been removed for the purpose of being used, but it was evident that the force of the sea pouring through the railings had, even at this great height, 110 feet above sea level, torn the life buoy off the ropes.
Wow, that sounds really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about, again, bending iron, displacing and twisting concrete, moving a huge block of stone, that would be, to me, very powerful winds, waves, or a combination of both.
Force of nature.
Yeah, absolutely. The report also noted when the accident occurred, Ducat was wearing sea boots and a waterproof, Marshall sea boots and oilskins, and as Moore assures me that the men only wore those articles when going down to the landings, they must have intended, when they left the station, either to go down to the landings or the proximity of it.
And that makes sense. Why else would they put them on?
Yeah, I can't imagine there was much need for sea boots inside the lighthouse.
Yeah.
But if you're going down to the landing where water, even when it's not some big storm, water's going to be lapping up, probably over the side. You're going to put your boots on. The report concluded, after a careful examination of the place, the railings, rope, etc., and weighing all the evidence which I could secure, I am of opinion that the most likely explanation of the disappearance of the men is that they all had gone down on the afternoon of Saturday, December 15th, to the proximity of the west landing to secure the box with the mooring ropes, etc., and that an unexpectedly large roller had come up the island and a large body of water going up higher than where they were and coming down upon them had swept them away with resistless force.
And that's kind of what you have mentioned you thought occurred.
Yeah. I mean, I can see a scenario where that could happen.
You know, these guys are on this island. This is not their first rodeo, right? I mean, they know about storms. They know about sea life.
Yeah, probably better than most.
Yeah.
Spending long periods of time out there.
So you would think they probably had some awareness around the fact that a big roller could come in.
But I think that's the thing about waves, whether you call it a roller, a rogue wave, or whatever term you want to use. I don't think you're expecting that really monstrous one. And once it comes, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's not like you can run away from it. If it's going up above you, up the hill higher than where you are, well, again, that water is going to come down and with its force sweep you right out probably.
And anything else in its way.
Yeah. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Are you ready to unlock your creativity and transform your passion for beauty into a career? Southeastern College is here to help you take your first steps towards training for a career in cosmetology. Unlock your potential and start your path towards a career making people feel confident. It's time to invest in yourself. Visit sec.edu for more information on our programs and take the first step toward training for a brand new career in cosmetology. Your before and after story starts now at Southeastern College.
Muirhead went on to say, I have considered and discussed the possibility of the men being blown away by the wind, but as the wind was westerly, I am of the opinion, notwithstanding its great force, that the more probable explanation is that they have been washed away as had the wind caught them. It would, from its direction, have blown them up the island, and I feel certain that they would have managed to throw themselves down before they had reached the summit or brow of the island.
So he's saying it's not the wind. It had to be the water.
He's saying it's more likely the water than the wind. Muirhead also expressed his sadness over the tragedy. He knew Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur well, and he had personally recommended them for the Flannan Isles station. Muirhead worked with them in 1899 to prepare for the winter, and he appreciated their hard work. So a couple of things there for me, obviously number one, tougher when you know the individuals personally. And then, when he worked with them, but also recommended them for this position, that's going to hit hard.
You're going to have a little bit of guilt, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like if you and I work together and I said, Gibbs, I need you to fly out to Denver and meet with this client. And the plane goes down on the way out. I mean, I'm going to carry that for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because had I chosen someone else, had I not chosen anyone to go out, no one dies.
And I'd still be around instead of haunting you for the rest of your life.
Which I guarantee you would do.
Absolutely.
Muirhead noted that he was the last to see the keepers alive. On December 7th, during a relief visit, he had the melancholy recollection. He wrote that he was the last person to shake hands with them and bid them adieu.
Well, that would be strange.
Yeah, I think there's something to it, right? If you're the last one to see anyone alive who is later never heard from or who is later found dead, that's going to be a strange feeling.
Going to stick with you.
Although this official report was released to the public, there was widespread speculation about what really happened to the lighthouse keepers that ranged from some realistic possibilities to even conspiracy theories to maybe even some wild theories. Some thought the keepers were attacked by a sea monster or whisked off the island by a ghost ship. Others speculated that they fled the island by boat to escape their debts or were kidnapped by spies.
But when you don't have bodies and you don't have an absolute certain on what happened, this is what you're going to get.
Oh, a lot of speculation.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. But what type of sea monster are we talking about here?
I mean, it could be many types of sea monsters.
Well, it is 1900.
Yeah.
So, less was known about what was really in the ocean, stuff like that. I'm not sure what a ghost ship is. Are we talking like Pirates of the Caribbean or?
It may be some type of Loch Ness.
You keep calling it Loch Ness? I'm pretty sure it's Loch Ness.
For people that don't understand the Scottish language.
I got you. I've always heard it called Loch Ness.
Yeah.
Not Loch Ness.
Then you have, and I know I think I mentioned it during the Patreon, Edgar Allan Poe wrote about lighthouses in very mysterious ways and talked about how mermaids were involved. So maybe a platoon of mermaids.
A platoon? Okay.
A group.
a whole platoon.
Or maybe just one. I don't know. Or are they called siren? A siren? A siren?
You just repeating the word 3 times does not change anything. But what did Edgar Allan Poe write that wasn't mysterious or macabre?
Well, that's true. That's true.
And you have, they fled the island on a boat to escape their debts. Well, were they in debt? Did somebody check into that?
Yeah. And how do you know that back then? They'd have like a little journal with all their debts in it.
Yeah, I don't know. And then being kidnapped by spies, I'm sure there were spies, but wouldn't there be some kind of follow-up saying, we'll return your lighthouse keepers if you give us back some of our spies that you've captured, or they just took them and did what with them?
I ask them, how many boats pass here every day?
Tortured them for what information?
Yeah.
Suspicion then shifted to one of the keepers after alleged logbook entries were published. In an entry from December 7th, Thomas Marshall wrote that a great storm hit the island, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. James Ducat was unusually quiet, and MacArthur was crying. The second entry noted that all 3 men prayed during the storm. The third entry, written on December 15th, stated that the storm had passed and all was calm.
Okay. I mean, so it sounds like they went through some pretty bad time.
Yeah, he said one guy was crying.
Yeah.
And these are grizzled lighthouse veterans.
Yeah, you would think there'd be no crying going on, but how bad had that storm had to be for that to occur? But then they say, but it's all calm now.
Well, I think, you read these logbook entries. What it did was it caused some to question if the men were really swept out to sea, since Marshall apparently wrote that the storm had passed. Furthermore, if one of the keepers had died in the storm, the entries would have mentioned this. However, there is no evidence that these logbook entries ever existed. There's thought that this was simply an embellishment added to the story several years after the disappearance.
Well, if that's the case, it's definitely going to add to the conspiracy theories. Because people are going to say, was it really at it, or was it always there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for stories to get embellished, right, as the years go on.
It's not like they had Xerox machines to make copies of the originals as they were found to dispute later entries.
Or were they ever found?
Or if they ever, yeah, exactly.
One plausible but still unlikely theory casts suspicion on Donald MacArthur, who was described as a man with a temper, who liked to settle arguments by fighting. And we mentioned it very early on, right? He reportedly hated the Flannan Isles posting. It's been speculated that he might have started a fight on the Western Landing that caused all three men to fall to their deaths.
Well, nothing worse when you have somebody that doesn't want to be somewhere, but they're stuck there for an extended amount of time. It's just going to make everybody miserable. And maybe the other guys finally had enough. Like, you're just an old grump. We're tired of your shit. Let's go out to the west side landing.
We'll settle it.
We'll settle it, Mr. Fighter.
And is it possible in a brouhaha that they all, fell into the ocean and died? I mean, there's a lot of things that are possible.
Yeah.
Another theory is that one of the men, possibly MacArthur, killed the other two lighthouse keepers for unknown reasons, threw their bodies off a cliff, and then jumped into the ocean.
I think that's possible. Maybe just had some things going on in his mind from being there isolated with these two other guys. Didn't want to be there anyway. Got upset with them. Thought, I'll just take care of you while you're sleeping. And then got rid of the evidence and said, you know what? I don't want to be here either, and just dove off the cliff.
Yeah, I think people who kind of float this theory think that, there was some cabin fever, right? Either on his part especially, or on the part of everyone. They're on this isolated island, tensions flared. But it should be noted there was no evidence of a fight or any evidence of a murder on the island. But as you said, could that have been cleaned up or everything put back right, and then he jumped off himself?
Yeah, I think it could be. Or he coaxed him outside and
it all happened outside.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
According to Sky History, one possibility is that Marshall and Duquette were swept away while trying to secure supplies and equipment on the West Landing. And when they failed to return, Donald MacArthur went out looking for them and also died in the storm, rather than the three of them being swept away at once. And again, I think all of these are possible.
Yeah. I don't think you can discount them.
No, and some of these where they're swept away, they're not even all that far-fetched to me. Now, when you talk about sea monsters and ghost ships and stuff like that, you're getting off of my plausibility meter a little bit, but
just slightly, huh?
Just a little bit. Now, people might wonder why the keepers would go out in such dangerous conditions rather than waiting out the storm and then making repairs afterwards. As reported by Sky History, Thomas Marshall was previously fined 5 shillings for losing equipment in a previous storm, which back then was a serious pay, Doc.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of change.
Considering the other 2 men had wives and children to support, they might not have been willing to risk such a loss in wages.
So let's get out there and secure that stuff, guys.
Meaning they were willing to take the risk because they didn't want to lose the money.
And I also think, even though they were experienced, like some men in that position, I think they would say, I'm not worried. I got this. I'm going to still go out there and take it on.
It's just a storm.
Yeah, it's just a storm. I can handle this.
Yeah. Until something comes along that you're not ready for, such as this really large wave that's been speculated about.
One of those once in a lifetime.
Yeah, and there's no planning for that, right? It doesn't matter how much you've trained. It doesn't matter what shape you're in. There are things that happen in nature that you just cannot handle.
It's like that movie Perfect Storm, right? I mean, having the time of their lives, things are going good. All of a sudden this storm comes up. They never imagined they would be in that storm, and they would never imagine what would happen to them in the end.
Despite its infamous reputation for the disappearance of its keepers, the Flannan Isles Lighthouse remains in operation to this day. As mentioned, the lighthouse was manned by crews until 1971 when it became automated. The island is now equipped with a helipad for maintenance visits.
That's the way to do it.
Over a century later, the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers remains one of Scotland's most well-known unsolved cases. As we wrap this one up, Gibbs, to me, I believe the men most likely died in some type of tragic accident. But like you said, because they were never found, you can't prove anything.
No, you're always going to have a mystery around it.
And that's why there's so many theories that have sprung up over the years and persist even to this day.
I mean, I think you got 3 or 4 good theories that you could put some weight behind outside of the monsters and the ghost ship, we know.
So you're not buying the sea monster ghost ships?
No, if you would have...
Or spies?
No spies, maybe a mermaid.
Or a siren.
Or siren. Yeah, that. But, no, I mean, I think, like we said, there's 3 or 4 things that you could say potentially happened. But I think at the end of the day, most of the weight goes around the fact that there was some type of rogue wave that wiped him out to sea.
Yeah, in the middle of what was already a storm.
Yeah.
So they go down, they're trying to secure the equipment, make sure they don't lose anything. They're on this landing, which is down, obviously close to the water, and then the cliff goes up.
Yeah.
So the wave comes up over top of them, hits the cliff, and then comes crashing down on them.
I mean, all you have to do is go out on the internet and you can search rogue waves. I've seen videos where you have tourists on the rocks of a beach area looking out at the beautiful water, and all of a sudden a big wave comes in that no one expects, and it goes up and over the rock over them, and you see people being swept out.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was expecting that. Now, luckily, it looks like it was shallow water. I'm sure they were all okay.
Yeah.
But you can see if that was deep water, cold water, rocky water, probably not going to survive.
Yeah, water can be very destructive.
And that's why you don't like going in the water in the ocean.
In the ocean. It's one of the reasons.
It is one.
But it is a mysterious case. I think, some of the problems are, number one, it's 126 years old.
Sure.
And then it also happened in such a remote place that there was 3 people there, and none of them apparently lived to tell the tale. So, you're just not going to get much information. All you can do is speculate.
And it's not like they had the weather channel or the weather group, weather reports to reflect, oh, yeah, we see there was a big storm that happened that day, and we can see that they probably had wakes that were, 25 feet tall or things like that. They don't have that like they would have today.
Yeah, they might have some record of what the weather was like, but I don't know how they would know exactly how strong it was hitting that island.
Right.
That would be tough. You don't have Doppler whatever
exactly.
in 1900. But that's it for our episode on the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. I am definitely going to watch that movie now.
Yes, because it's got your boy in it.
I do like Gerard Butler.
Yes, you do.
But now I'm just fascinated to see what the movie is and how it compares to the story.
Yeah, it's not too old. I think the movie was shot in 2018 or something like that.
Okay. I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear it.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Gibby. Just calling in to say you guys are one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. Every Monday morning while I'm at work, first thing I do is listen to True Crime All the Time and True Crime All the Time Unsolved. I love it. I've also got a case suggestion for you. It's the case of Jessica Evans and Jacob Wheeler for True Crime All the Time Solved. It's a case that happened not very far from where I live at in southern Illinois. And it's just a horrible, tragic case. I think you guys would do a great job covering it. And then for the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast, I've got the case of Heather Teague. That happened also about 30 years ago, I believe. It was 30 years ago, really close to where I live at. Also in southern Indiana, and that case remains unsolved to this day. I just wanted to give you guys a call and say how much I love the show. Keep doing good work, and I'll keep listening. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks for the voicemail, the kudos, and we'll definitely look into both of them.
Yeah.
Now, she lives in Southern Illinois. I wonder if we can also find a case in Southern Illinois.
Maybe.
For you.
I mean, I'll contact my cousins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Put the word out through the cousin network.
Exactly. She's a fast talker too, wasn't she?
You know, I speed the voicemails up a little bit.
Oh.
Or I run them together. I compress the
data file.
No, I compress the dead space.
Oh, okay.
So that it may make it sound like people are talking a little faster, just so that they're not so long.
Do you do that to me sometimes?
No, I don't need to. You don't talk that much. You don't talk enough for me to need to compress you. Although a lot of people would like it if I would speed our own voices up because they think we talk slow, but that's just the way we talk.
I think we're so Southern in Ohio.
Hey, I was just listening to an episode, and something you said reminded me of an old memory I had. The dude said something about, I think I killed an old boy or something like that. And I used to have a friend, well, I guess he's still my friend, from Louisiana, Sugartown, Louisiana. And every time he was telling a story about, like, a man or a boy or something, every time he would say, oh boy this, and oh boy that. So, and he's the only person I've ever heard to say that. So maybe it's a Louisiana thing. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that you had said that, and it reminded me of him. So I had to call. You probably don't care about that, but I thought it was interesting.
We always care.
We do.
Because that's just how we roll.
We're a caring group of old boys.
Old boy Gibby.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Stream all the movies and shows you love for free on Pluto TV.
Say what now? Showtime.
That means drama is free with heart-wrenching stories from Love and Basketball, Power, and Greenleaf.
In this family, we live by the Spirit.
And laughter is free with gut-busting comedies like Key and Peele, The Neighborhood, Everybody Hates Chris, and Boomerang. Watch all the hits, all for free from all your favorite devices.
Oh my God, I love it!
Feel the free Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.